Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is SamElliott64, and welcome back to the RoboCast. I'm joined alongside
Steve, the American Killjoy.
World of Woodrow.
And we are joined by a very, very special guest to talk all things Round of 32 and a few other things aside from that. Introduce yourself, sir.
Hello, I'm Peter Abrahamson. I am the Bot Whisperer.
The actual Bot Whisperer himself. We are not worthy. Pete, it's an absolute joy to have you. Obviously, for yourself, you've obviously been on the other side of the arena as well. You fought BattleBots back in the Comedy Central days. You know, obviously your robot was Ronin once upon a time. How does it feel to be on the other side now, as a part of a presenting role instead of just competing?
Well, I mean, it's funny. You guys say it as if I jumped straight from competing right to
just a seamless transition.
I mean, also my competing goes all the way back to 1994 with the very first Robot Wars in the United States. And also I was with Mark Satrakian and Greg Munson and Trey Roski at BBC presenting the idea with Mark Thorpe to the BBC of what we could do. We brought the Master, we brought Law Machine, and Thor was the robot we also brought along with us. And we had a little mini competition for them to show them what could possibly be made. And you guys got a show out of it. We did not. We got lawsuits.
So, yeah, I remember this. I was just explaining this. My mom was asking me, was like, oh, you're talking to Pete Abrahamson tomorrow. And I kind of told her a little bit of the history, and she's like, oh my God, there was so much legal stuff for something that's supposed to be entertainment. Something a couple of guys got together and shut a street down for, just for fun.
Yeah. Well, we'll just to get over the history, let's tell everybody, go read the book Gearheads by Brad Stone. That'll give all there you go. Thank you. Perfect. Well done. Props are
the old Witch Doctor.
It's a good read.
Tale of the Tape episode and might have bought it.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing like having the right prop at the right time just to wig up and stick in front of the camera. So
absolutely.
But come along, we move forward, go through Comedy Central days where I was a competitor the whole time, did Zawsbots where we had 1 pound robots and I was part of the actual sort of running of Zawsbots. Come to Greg calls me up and says, ABC just picked us up. We're going to come back and do BattleBots on television again. Would you build a robot? I said, hold on a minute. Let me go and produce a budget. So I sort of did a rough estimate of what it was going to take me to build the robot.
Oh, so there was potential that you could have bought Ronin back for the new
or something different entirely.
Something different. Thank you. Ronin was already a sculpture at that point in time.
A product of its time.
There was way too much smoke that came out of it to let it come back into the ring. And way too much. It was a super heavyweight. There was no way I could compete at 250 pounds with the Ronin. And so I did a budget for a new robot, and I asked him, what is the stipend? And he told me, and the two did not match. And I went, okay, I don't think I can build, but I want to be a part of the show. What can I do? And Greg was like, well, you probably should come on as like a technical advisor. Like I already sort of help out with rules and I help out with sort of safe. Like there's lots of discussions that have always happened in the background between Greg, Trey, and myself and a few others that was sort of always like, hey, what do you think about if we did this? So he said, come in as a technical advisor. So I came into the show and right away was sort of brought into the control room with some of the first fights. And every time something weird went wrong, they would go like, Pete, what the hell happened? What was that? What just went on? And I could quickly describe what was going on within the arena. And so they started having me meet with Chris and Kenny every morning to discuss the fights that were coming up for that day. So we could I could help them be a little more technical. I would give words to them, how can we talk about what this fight is going to be and what do I think might happen in this fight based upon whoever it might be. And so at some point while sitting in the control room, and I don't remember what season it was, somebody had said, dude, you're like a bot whisperer. Like, you seem to know everything. Like, how do you know all this shit? It's like, well, I've been around it a long time. I've been seeing a lot of fights. And we originally, for my very first season, I think I was credited for play-by-play producer, which didn't really make sense. I was actually sitting next to Mike Burke in the control room, who Mike does. He sort of talks to Chris and Kenny through their headsets. He gives them tidbits that might be in the big book about something that may be with the family that built this robot or these different little elements. And I would usually give him one or two, like, here's important technical bits about these robots. And he would relay those to Chris and Kenny. And he was also the guy that does every one of the slow-mos at the end. Whenever we sort of come back and we show a little thing, he's done all that. He's the guy, he does football, he does a bunch of things. So he can do all that playback, and he's the one handling that. And so it was like, that's much more what Mike does. Like, I don't do play-by-play. And they were like, well, what do you want your credit to be? And we were talking about sort of like bot producer, because that's kind of, in a way what I was doing. And then I said, why don't we go with bot whisperer?
Mm-hmm.
And they looked at me like, really? That's what you want to go with? Like, you sure? And I was like, yeah, let's go with that.
He speaks to the machines and they speak back.
Because they already, like, you guys already call me that. So why don't we just go with that? And they're like, okay, it's going to be your credit on screen. And it was perfect, because I noticed in subsequent seasons is Greg or somebody would every now and again get like a tweet like, I was just watching the credits. Who the hell is this bot whisperer person? And then come this season,
they decided to shove a camera in your face.
Yeah, they decided to bring me in front, and they said, hey, we're really happy with what we saw with your interview during Remars, during the Amazon event.
Yeah.
Because
aside from the chair breaking.
Aside from me wrestling with the director's chair. Yeah.
I still remember that.
And Chris, I love Chris Rose. He's always kind of like grabbing my shirt and kind of sitting me back straight up, right? Because I would get so intense. I'd be like, right here. And Chris would always kind of like reset me to like, set up straight for the camera.
Yeah, he's very professional, talking head desk,
he's good. He is a pro.
He's done podcasts with other people in the community, and one thing I noticed is whenever anyone else spoke, immediately he would just shut off, because that's what he's been trained to do for so many years. It's the same with him and Kenny. They just have such a great relationship at this point. They just know when each other are going to speak telepathically almost.
Yeah, it is awesome to sort of be able to watch those two sort of right next to each other doing their thing. And so they said, we want you, we're going to go to you at the very beginning of every fight, and you give a quick 30-second what you think might happen in this fight. And so we started doing that on day one. Like, okay, what robot, like what they would do is Mike Burke would talk in my headset, and he would say, okay, Kenny's going to talk about Witch Doctor, and then we're going to go to Kraken. Peter, who do you want to talk about? And I would say, well, I got a great little tip from Matt, so let me talk about Kraken. And so I would do a quick little 30-second bit about strategy I might have heard from the bot builders, or elements they changed on their robot that I'm paying attention to, and those kind of things. And that's how it started. Well, day two, all of a sudden, they bring me into an instant replay. Like, Pete, what do you think? I'm like, oh, okay, hold on. Whoa, I'm not really ready for this. And then they start bringing me at the end of fights with controversial judges' decision. Peter, what do you think your opinion was? And then they were bringing me in if like a weapon stopped spinning. Let's say like Bloodsport was a great fight. They go, hey, Pete, what's going on with Bloodsport's weapon? And I said, I think they actually turned that off because they're holding back, because they're doing really well. No need to burn themselves out. And sure enough, Marple says at the very end, he goes, oh yeah, we were kind of saving it because we wanted to make sure. It felt like it was getting a little warm, so we just wanted to hold off. And it was like, and I've been having to, what I think I said was, I'm live without a safety net except for the cutting room floor, right? If they choose to use me, great, but they don't always.
Right.
It gives them the option. They can do if they want to. They don't have to if they don't want to.
Exactly.
And they've done pretty good, I think, this season, is kind of sprinkling you in places where they think it would be beneficial for the audience to hear a little bit more information about the fight, or what happened, or what is going to happen, what you think might happen. And it's been very, to be honest, I think it's been a great thing. It's been very beneficial to the show. It's kind of brought a depth to the show that I think was missing for a little while.
Certainly, Discovery do. They sort of want to know the sort of behind the scenes and the more technical side of things. So it's a really good fit. I think it's something.
They couldn't have got away with this on Comedy Central. Not even close. I mean, you had Bill Nye, but I mean, there was it wasn't the same. I loved him though. That was great.
I've been really happy because all the builders have really said it's been a huge boon to the show. The builders have really enjoyed it. So if I'm making them happy, that's the most important, because that's sort of what I want to do. Is I want to represent the community. I'm trying to represent the builders and talk in a way that they talk and explain that to everyone else. I don't want it to feel like I'm some alien out of, that never knew what this stuff was and it was just hired because, I'm a pretty face. Right.
You're gorgeous. Absolutely.
Face made for radio.
Another thing I do want to talk about before we actually crack on with the round of 32 is, at the moment, BattleBots applications are currently open for
they are.
Season. What is it that you in particular look for in terms of application style, and what is it that I used the quote earlier before we were recording. Tickle your fancy. What is it? What is it? What is it for robots that get you going?
I mean, there are a lot of sort of check boxes I kind of have to put in to make sure that I need to know if this person is built before. That's a huge deal, is having some understanding, because it's also good once in a while to have somebody who's never done this before come in there. But it is really hard on them. It is really hard on them, because that 2 weeks that we just did was rough. I mean, I am
culture shock. You're not expecting that.
I sit in front of camera and I'm still working 18-hour days. They're building robots and trashing their hands and spending a crap ton of money on new speed controllers, new motors in the pits, and they're working just as hard or harder, through the night. So somebody who's going to have the stamina and the mentality to be able to handle that kind of environment. And usually it comes from people that they've been to an ant weight competition, they've been to a beetle weight competition, and they've really started to work their way up. Or they've been fighting in UK Robot Wars for a few years back, or they did BattleBots way back when, or Robo Games, or whatever robot competition.
Yeah, some kind of experience to show that they've done something like this before. Some
experience. I mean, It is also, like I said, it's fun to have one or two people that have never been there before to bring them into the fold, but experience is major to me. Can the robot that they're describing within their application survive 8 fights? Because to get the nut, minimum, you're going to do 8 fights. And that's 8 fights with things like Tombstone and Endgame and Bloodsport thrown in the middle of that. Those aren't just, I'm going to get by with cream puffs for 8 fights. No, that's some serious fights you're going to have to do, especially in the later matches, and you're going to have to do at least one top 16 style robot back in the fight card style. So that's another big thing, is I look at, what does this robot look like it's going to make it through? Have they thought about how they're going to get through 8 fights? Do they have enough spares? Did they bring 2 robots? Is their robot built strong enough or in the right design to survive that beating? Because attrition is probably the worst thing that's going to get you in this sport, is the next fight. Whether you limp out of one with Tombstone and are still running, it doesn't mean that your robot is good enough for another fight after that.
Yeah,
your whole motor mount can be 90 degrees from each other. There's just so much damage that can happen in these bots.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the invisible damage. So let's say Hydra.
Yes.
Gravity is sometimes far worse than Tombstone. People don't realize how bad gravity is.
I think we saw that in the last episode too, with Uppercut falling from almost the full height of the box.
Yeah. The other part that is sort of changed, especially with this season, is that's a 1/2 inch thick steel floor with a whole spider web of reinforcement bars underneath. There is no more bounce. There is no more trampoline. So when you hit that floor, you're hitting a rock, right? It's solid. and it makes you sort of look back at the Witch Doctor Hydra fight and go, wow, Witch Doctor is a tough robot. Because if your robot can't survive being pushed off your table or knocking over your cart onto the garage floor, you shouldn't be at BattleBots, because it's not going to survive its first fight then.
We heard from Craig Danby when he was talking about what he's been doing to get the robot ready. He's thrown it off of everything imaginable. He's thrown it off of trucks. He's thrown it off of sort of loading areas. And the thing just, when it breaks, you go, okay, I need to fix this so it will survive the next fall.
That kind of experience is priceless. I mean, that is the way you learn. You know, I mean, obviously the 3 minutes in the box is the best learning you're ever going to get. But throwing your robot off the back of a truck is pretty powerful too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well.
Sorry. We're still in the 30. We're still talking about applications. Sorry.
Carry on.
Aesthetics matter also. You know,
it is a TV show at the end of the day. Like, you can't, like, I know once upon a time silver wedges may have cut it, but
there were so many.
There were a lot. But it is, 20 years have passed since then. Paint is available if you want it.
Paint, and not just paint, but paint and shape. You know, you can sculpt a very beautiful robot out of steel and titanium and AR and whatever else you're going to make it out of. There are plenty of beautiful bots out there that are made out of some pretty intense materials. And it's just about taking the time to give that extra oomph.
Yeah, the one that springs to mind for me is Quantum from last season. Just the way that the whole
beautiful
dragon head thing, fantastic stuff, isn't it?
Quantum was exquisite.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful, and every part, like the machining on every part is, it is really nice. If you get close to it, I know what it takes to CNC machine and what it takes to take your part from CAD and go make the part in the machine and then make sure they all fit together. And Quantum is exquisite when you get up close to it.
It really is. It really is.
It's important to know, and I know BattleBots put basically a white paper together where basically your bot has to look good, not only as it in full color, its silhouette also has to be very noticeable, and it has to be identifiable, and you have to know, oh, that's that robot. Just from that, it needs to be that recognizable, and I think that's really important for what they're looking for.
Yeah, imagine going back to World War II and the how to identify German fighter planes flying over England kind of like chart that used to come out. That kind of thing. Like, we need to be able to notice these robots in that quick, like, wow, that's Hypershock. I just know by its line and its cut, and of course Hydra, like that little pancake of a thing. Like, I can see it perfectly.
Yeah. Absolutely. There is actually online somewhere, if anyone else is interested, while you're listening or watching this on YouTube, there is a great video. I think yourself, Pete, and I think it was Mike Jeffries from Bombshell that did like I want to say it was a panel of some kind, and where you
at DragonCon a couple of years back. Yes, we talked about how to get into BattleBots and what is BattleBots sort of looking for, and I did it from sort of the production end, and he talked about what it is like as a builder to go for it and do it.
Yeah, I might link that actually in the description. That might be quite good if anyone is thinking of applying.
Interested in
absolutely.
Me blathering on some more about some other stuff.
It's a good listen. It's good really for people to get the idea of what you guys expect, because it's
like teams like us. We've applied before. We've applied again for next season. And we've learned, okay, what do we need to do from this version of the machine to make it more accessible to BattleBots? Because, okay, yes, our machine works, it's done its thing, but at the same time, if you look at it, you think that's not a BattleBot. That's okay. Yes, it's great for a live event. It's good fun to drive around, but it's not the same caliber of machine that you want to see.
The team, what is the team composition? What are the people, and who are, and also how. It's the hard one to learn, and it takes a while. Is how comfortable are you in front of a camera? Your charisma on camera will really shine through and make it. Yes, we all call Jake the bad guy, right?
Yes,
but
he has totally embraced that.
He's amazing on camera, or like on the other end, Will, who is like, he should be taking my seat. Like, Will is
maybe one day
good.
Yeah,
So good on camera.
He may well do.
He could. Like, I mean, so he's just a complete natural. And that really helps in, like, if you have, maybe your bot isn't performing the best, like Will, doesn't always, Hypershock bites him in the ass more than it actually wins for him.
Oh, man, we have so talked about it. We're like, man, why does he have to start over every time? Will, I'm talking directly to you. Just iterate. We love your machine.
But please, for the love of God, leave it alone.
I always joke about, he is the love of my life and the bane of my existence, because I show up and I'll come in the morning because I'm always first in. I'm like there about 6 a.m. and walk around the pits and I check all the robots to sort of see what's going on. So I have a good sense of what we're going to go do that day. And there will be Will's robot down to the frame. And I'm like, he's a fight in 4 hours. What is he doing? What is he doing? You can't do this to me. I need you ready. Like, stop. I really needed to change this speed controller. I was really unhappy with the way the motors react. It's like, come on.
Well, it's a good job we've spoken about Hypershock, because at this point, I think it's quite a nice segue into the round of 32. Now, for those that have seen our previous podcast, I haven't uploaded it as of time of recording, but we've spoken about a certain team that didn't make it in. I think at this point, the point has been said. So if you've got any questions about that, see the previous podcast, because we've talked into the ground.
We're done. We've had it.
The internet has
You've had it. We've had it. We're moving on.
Yes. I have flip-flopped so much over that, and I think I'm happy with where I'm at with it now. So
I think I made I think I made a good point in the last video, and I want to say it again, where the US, we have the college football playoff, and right now they have 4 teams going into that. There's always explanation of like, oh, what if we expanded it to 8 to 16 to 32? There's always going to be someone who's getting left out that you think should be in. And no matter how much you expand the field, there's going to be people that are pissed. So unfortunately, someone has to lose out. And that's what the committee's job is for. It's not a sought after job, but someone's got to do it.
I said to you yourself, Pete, like I said to you, it sometimes is an unwinnable situation. Like, someone will always be upset. And like, as much as P1 has had a great season, I'm sure you'd be the first to say that. Like, specifically that this team, unfortunately, there are only 32 spaces. Someone has to miss out. Yeah.
And I mean, the selection committee does not take win-loss as the only variable. Right. There are so many, it's sort of some of the stuff I talked about can a robot survive 8 rounds kind of thing, because getting thrown in at number 32, you're probably not going to make it. Almost
very
right
unlucky.
Away. Like you are, and is
Cinderella might not dance.
Is that going to be the best fight for the round of 32 for television? Yeah. So those are the things. I mean, we want a balance to look good. Yeah. I've actually had quite a few Zoom conversations that have lasted about 2 hours with Brandon from P1 about what can make P1 a more competitive bot. And so we've talked a lot about it. I mean, he seemed to have come to he's had his moment and has sort of accepted what happened and where he's at. And he's willing to he's pushing forward. He wants to make a better robot that is now undeniably that should be the 32.
That's the other thing we said. Like, ultimately, as well as that, one thing is he's going to want to prove everyone wrong next year. And the other thing is it's giving you, any member of production really a great opportunity now to say, okay, well, P1 didn't make it in because of this robot. They can fight each other now. It gives you the chance to kind of say, okay, prove your worth.
Right.
Throw them a bone. I mean, they kind of got thrown a bone this year, but they got thrown a bone that was Copperhead, and that was a tough one for them. So it seems like each robot gets thrown. Yeah, it seems like each robot gets a chance to prove themselves against a top tier machine, and if they don't, then I mean, in their case, their third fight was it was Smee, but I mean, it's not a fodder robot. It's just something that hadn't had a great season as well. So it was more of a fight to fill.
And I mean, it's sad for Brandon because that fight was his best fight.
It was so good.
And it was brilliant. I mean, hey, dude, can you bench 250 pounds? I can.
Right. It was great.
I mean, that was great fight, and it was his last fight before the selection, right?
I know. It's terrible timing for him to be like, "Oh, that robot should be in," because we just saw it do well.
People walk away from.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. But we do have a 32. Shall we?
We have a 32.
We do have a 32, and at number 32, we've already spoken a little bit about them. It is Hypershock. 1 and 2. It's 2 losses. You could argue this. The first loss was probably a bit more deserving, but the second fight they could have done nothing about it because Endgame just gave them no chance to breathe.
No chance.
It's also worth remembering that Hypershock had all 3 of its fights as main events or international main events, the mid-card majors. So, it's a pretty strong showing in the fights it's been put into, which sort of balances out against how it's done in those fights and how it will do going forwards, I feel.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see.
We will
if it
see.
If it stays the way it is right now, and
the chosen one.
We will see.
So here you go. Here's your chance. Who do you think is going to win Hypershock versus Hydra?
You're right.
We'll talk a little bit about Hydra while we're here then. Obviously,
jump from 32 to 1. Yeah.
Well,
let's just skip on in.
I mean, Hydra has been excellent this season. Obviously, the bike rack notwithstanding, lots of things could be said about that. I mean, what was your reaction to that, Pete? Obviously you watched the fight arena side. I think you kind of said mid-fight, I don't know what's going on here, or something along those lines.
They had showed it to me long before the fight.
Sure.
They said, this is what we're putting on. And I had severe reservations. I said, look, we don't have anywhere in the rules that says you can't do this. But in the spirit of it, is this the right choice you're making? You're really not going to come out looking very good. Playing that, you can't touch me, you can't touch me, you can't touch me, like game.
Like the bigger brother with the little brother who's shorter and you're just swinging like this.
Exactly, that same thing. And it's like, is that a fun fight for us to show on television? And because you're already proving that you're an amazing robot, we're going to need to show your fight. Plus, it's with Huge. Like, I mean, come on, we can't let Huge not be shown. I had severe reservations about it from a sort of robot cultural social viewpoint of like, I didn't think this would be a good look for you. But if you really feel that you want that win more than how you're going to come across, that's up to you guys.
What are they willing to give? Yeah.
And it's that's what they chose. Look at, so everybody's been comparing it to Tornado versus Razor from classic Robot Wars.
Yeah.
And let's be honest.
No, sorry.
You heard it here first, everyone.
Of that fight has lasted nearly 20 years now. So Jake, I think, must have known what he's let himself in for the next. I think
he's embracing it, isn't he? Like from some of the posts I've seen him in posts on social media, like the one that I saw was the Donald Trump's pardoning Jake Hewitt.
Right.
Like some of that is just like I appreciate the fact that he's willing to play the villain and kind of big it up rather than I would have felt a bit more sorry for him if he'd kind of said, look, we did it to win, but like the fact that he's embraced it, I'm kind of like, come on.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing because it was a perfect win. Like it was a good win. He got it right.
He drove beautifully.
He always does. Actually, if you pay attention, Hydra is where it needs to be almost every time. He rarely misses a flip. He did a couple of misses against Uppercut, just probably due to the shape of Uppercut, that he was coming in and getting a triangle of open space of negative area and flipping instead of getting underneath like a square bot might have been. But Jake is dialed in that bot and really's got it to catch at the right edges when he wants to.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we go with 31 and 1? Sorry, 31 and 2 next.
Yeah, why not?
So that is Gruff and Bloodsport. We'll start with Gruff, who sneaking in at the skin of their teeth, which I think if you look at Gruff's season, they started so well against Hypershock, and of course they had a really, really good fight as well with Whiplash when they, there were times where they were on top, it wasn't very many, but there were opportunities for them. I think in the end, Matt's driving just kind of showed and paid off in the end because he's just excellent, as we've waxed lyrical about so many times. The fact that Gruff's in makes me really excited because it can absolutely take a hit. And
yes,
it's going to need to against Bloodsport.
Gruff is the tank, the ultimate tank in that space, and is Gruff is kind of fulfilling the duck category for this season in a way of being able just to take hits on the chin repeatedly and just keep driving. He did get outdriven by Matt. Matt just, that was a rough fight, and that was a great fight. That was the kind of things I love to see. Is it showed the skill of a driver really doing his best. I think I'm very happy that Gruff was in. I love Gruff's flames. Oh my God, they give me such a tickle to watch. They're so beautiful. It's so the sound when it comes out, that jet engine roar, especially the new tri nozzles that they made. They're beautiful. If you look at the machining, they're exquisite. Oops, sorry. Headphones blowing them out of my ear. I'm gesturing so much.
You could say it's one of the most effective flamethrowers that we saw since season 2's Complete Control.
Yeah,
yes,
honestly.
Exactly. And that Complete Control actually required a very short distance because their flame was so hot and focused that it needed to be on that grab of bombshell and to be able to put the flame right where it was.
Still one of my favorite fights of the reboot.
Gruff has reach with all of that flame. And it's as hot as it was. It is amazing. They've done a really nice job.
You never tend to get a boring Gruff fight, do you? It always tends to put on a good show as well, which is another important factor for, getting selected into the bracket in this case.
And also as a team, like Sam and the team have just sort of stepped up. Like Sam was so quiet the first time. Yeah. And they have really, like, with the jackets and everything, they've kind of like started to come into it. Like, we should be proud of what we're doing. Let's show off and let's have a little bit of ego about ourselves because we should, because we built a great robot and they did. And so that's really nice to sort of witness the evolution of the team too, not just the bot.
And that robot's been around the block for quite a few years,
Yes, it has.
It's something I really like about their team is every time that it's their turn to push the button, they're all hands on there. Yeah. We're doing this all together, or not at all.
Yeah, it is very wholesome. Yeah, it is very wholesome. I do agree. Their opponent is Bloodsport, who have had quite the season. Yeah. I will say...
So much for a sophomore slump. This is like a sophomore jolt to the atmosphere.
My thing with Bloodsport is the last fight with Kronos. Obviously, we mentioned it a little bit earlier because obviously they were shutting their weapon off. I do wonder if that kind of exposed a little bit of a gap in their game because as much as they were causing damage to Kronos, it wasn't the destruction that we've seen against Skorpios and Endgame previously that they was struggling to get through. I wonder if Gruff, because it's such a tank, could take those hits.
It possibly could. I mean, the thing to remember with Kronos versus Bloodsport is you're basically talking about two circles attacking each other. Right? So there isn't an edge to catch, where Skorpios has lots of wonderful little edges all over it to sort of hit with Bloodsport, and same with Endgame. So that kind of stuff plays into it. Like basically what we were witnessing were two gears rolling against each other, and as they pop off. So you're maybe not seeing the damage on something like Kronos that you saw in some of their other fights. But I think with Gruff, they can definitely come and catch a few spots. I mean, yes, Gruff will take those hits and go flying across the arena and probably come right back at them. But Bloodsport can still hit just as hard.
So, moving on to 30 and 3, Little and Large, Mammoth and Coperhead.
I think Coperhead is the smallest, isn't it?
It's in without Tantrum.
It is a tight package.
I mean, I'll talk about Mammoth a little bit first because, I mean, that thing's just wonderful to watch. Like, especially this season, the backflips that they've been doing has been top-notch stuff.
I mean, there were the whole sort of attempting to do play-by-play during Mammoth Huge because most of the time we're just going, ooh, oh. Yeah, because it was so...
Huge hit there, Kenny.
Yeah, huge hit. It was just robot ballet, it was moment shots and like interpretive dance happening. It was what we were witnessing. It was great.
Yeah, you certainly don't expect like a 6-foot scaffolding frame to be able to jump another 6 foot into the air thanks to its weapon as well.
And completely like without touching the ground, do a full 180.
Mhm.
Like that thing is so big, and yet it was fully inverting itself in the air. Blew me away.
Phenomenal fight as well. That was as well.
They've had a few really good fights. I have to say, even though the Hypershock one was a little bit unfortunate, especially the damage they took late, even though Will was trying to help them, but no. And unfortunately, we never got to see them fight Deadlift because the fight was just a pushing fight. And that's something that the show just kind of showed us because it was important. And I get that, but I don't know. That's another bot that I'd like to see. Would have loved to see more of was Deadlift, but they just, I don't know. The team got a lot of screen time, just not the robot.
I think for a first-time bot for Deadlift, they have a lot of potential coming in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a really, as you'll get to see, we can't really talk much about bounty hunters, but by God, it's really decent, and it has had some amazing fights this season.
For a first-time bot, it is a very solid robot. It was pretty tough and well built, and survived a lot of beating. It took some good hits, and you wouldn't really notice it when you'd come up to the pits. It just go, oh look, there's Deadlift still ready to go for the next fight. So they did well. Yeah. They were a nice showing for their first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously number 3 is Coperhead, the teeny tiny robot, which this season has really taken a leap forward. It's so
Zach is just pounding other robots with Copper. I mean, Copperhead you could see there was some control issues that were going on, whether that was heat or not sure what. I mean, there are some problems that we as the audience can't really see, which are things like he is so low to the ground that little bits are scraping the paint off of the floor. So he's kind of catching every edge. So sometimes when he's stalled, it may not be because he's died. It's because he's just caught on a little teeny chip of steel that just had lifted up from the fight before. You know, I mean, it's tough to call all the like, oh my God, his motor failed. Well, I mean, maybe it did, but he was able to keep going and survive that fight and win. Absolutely.
I think another thing as well with Copperhead is the intimidation factor of that hum this year, because like it had it before, but it's just really. It's like a Minotaur-esque bellow. It's really horrible to listen to. And I imagine anyone who fights them is going to be intimidated by just the sound.
It's sad because you on television cannot hear how great it is. It shakes the space. Like when it gets going, like that vibration is so high. It's amazing. It's like kind of being next to an airport and a jet taking off. I mean, it's wonderful to watch and to listen to.
Absolutely.
And he kind of did take over. We don't really have a drum spinner on that Minotaur level, and he's stepped right in.
Yeah, he has. He's really stepped up this year.
A bot as powerful and as durable as the brick that is Minotaur.
Yeah. It is a shame that they're not here this year, but hopefully we'll be back in 21.
COVID!
I know. Go away.
I'm amazed at what we were able to do in 2 weeks with COVID restrictions and all the stuff, and nobody gets sick. Like
that's incredible as well.
It was an amazing feat done by Troy Combs, who is sort of our executive producer in charge of production, did a phenomenal job at the COVID protocols and making sure we were all safe. And
it was really good ventilation in that airplane hangar, is there not?
Yes.
So
I mean, I've got we'll move on, but I could tell a whole story about getting the ventilation up and running from what it was and getting the original engineer to help us solve that problem. So
29 and 4 is HiJinx and Uppercut. I'm actually going to start with Uppercut for this one because it's just blown my mind this year. That thing is ridiculous.
Not all it's blown. One of the biggest explosions in BattleBots histories, I think.
I think he's hitting easily as hard as Tombstone is hitting other robots easily. And he has a benefit Tombstone does not. He has the arena floor to work against. Like, since he's hitting up, he always pushes back down into the arena floor rather than Tombstone, which launches away, right? I mean, like, he's got physics in his pocket for his fights.
I think as well, like the thing that we kind of noticed in their fight against Hydra is they have 2 separate systems or something along those lines where it just spins up so fast. And then it has another system to keep it at the high speed once it gets there. And I think that was one of the reasons why I think they didn't quite handle Hydra maybe as well as it handled SawBlaze, is because it seemed to spin up very slowly in that fight. I couldn't, I don't know if you can tell us more or not.
I remember I came by to talk to Alex. I usually sort of try to talk to everybody in a break between lunch or whatever, where I can get sort of some more information, so that I have something in my pocket to be able to say right before a fight.
Right.
I went to go talk to Alex, and he had his headphones on and was in the middle of, I think he was talking to Charles Guan, his computer was open to graphs and charts of his whole speed controller assembly and discussing the ramps and the modes and the programming. And he was so deep, like his mom kind of stopped me before I got into his pit. And he said, look, he really needs a break. He's like, so in the middle of this, I'm like, okay, don't worry about it. I get what he's doing. I don't have to talk to him right now. So there was a lot of playing with the programming and understanding just how to get his motors to do what they need to do. And that's one of those things that, we talked about applications and how does your bot make it through all this stuff, and going beyond just the defaults within your speed controllers and understanding how to protect your motors as well as get the most out of them is a really key feature to a winning bot.
Absolutely. And obviously it has won some great fights this year. Obviously I think the fight against SawBlaze will kind of go down as a real turning point, because that was just incredible. Like, it wasn't even just the explosion, it was just the amount of damage that was done afterwards, like so quickly.
SawBlaze
the ferocity
has never taken a beating like it. I don't
No,
think.
it hasn't.
No, not even against Tombstone.
No, you don't do that to SawBlaze, and they did.
It was just like Jameson's reaction afterwards. He was just looking at it, just thinking, "Oh my!" Like, you could just see on his face, his whole face just kind of shrunk, and it was just like, "Oh my god!" It was incredible. I do want to talk about HiJinx a little bit as well. Obviously, they've made it on their Robot's first try. It's not the team's first try. Obviously, Jen and Orion have been around with Skorpios and Rex and Battle Royale in the past. They've got plenty of experience at BattleBots. For a new machine, though, to make it in, again, fair enough. And obviously they dealt with Chomp very well, which Chomp is quite awkward to fight because obviously it's a walker and it's kind of hard to approach it because of the turret, and they dispatched of it fairly well, I thought.
Right. I mean, they did a great job in... I think Chomp sort of missed its opportunities. One of the things that Chomp can do is all the legs retract and it sits all 500 pounds down on that skirt. So it kind of becomes much more of a bigger rock to move across the arena floor. But HiJinx just sort of waited for that one sort of hammer blow that lifts Chomp up, and then they sort of dove in. Like, it definitely was about timing. And that was that shows the team's experience to understand what's going on in the arena and when to wait for the opening and to take it, rather than beating themselves against the side armor the whole time. They kind of like waited for their perfect moment. They hit it a couple times, but got that underside. And that was enough to get all the legs underneath, or at least 4 of the 6, I think they'd bent and damaged.
Yeah, it's a shame to see like a work of art like Chomp damaged like that, but I mean, it's a fighting game.
It hurts my heart, trust me, but ever be expected to go into a BattleBots fight and not fight anything? Like, you got to fight everything. You're going to fight a Tombstone someday. You're going to fight an Uppercut, and you're going to fight a HiJinx. You're going to have to fight this no matter what robot you brought. And this just happened to be a time when, HiJinx was the better scissors to the rock.
Yeah. Extra scissors, I suppose.
Yeah.
28 and 5 is SlamMow and Black Dragon.
Black Dragon. Yeah.
Where do we start with this one? Should we start with SlamMow?
Well, let's start with SlamMow, because Craig...
He's waited patiently for this, hasn't he?
He's had such a rough time in previous seasons. Like, getting to where he is now and the dedication and the build style that he went with SlamMow, and also his performance with SlamMow. SlamMow really drove well. I mean, watching SlamMow, like SlamMow got a suplex on, who was it that they perfectly lifted, drove over and flipped it around, and I can't remember. It was an earlier fight for them, but beautiful. Like, it really, Craig deserves his spot. Like, I'm super happy he's where he is, because he showed, hey, I can actually build a good robot.
Yeah, because he's been there past two times and just has not panned out at all. Predator or Foxtrot just haven't really.
Even before then, with Foxic in the UK,
this is true.
I mean,
I
for him, bless
I
him.
remember because I was in the crowd for Series 8 and watching Foxic go in, it was like, okay, I know Foxic because it fought last right, so I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. We're going to see Foxic in Robot Wars, and it just did not want to play at all. And when it did want to play, it couldn't self-right. It's just one of those things, you know. But I completely agree. I think, you know, watching SlamMow this season, like, kind of this is almost like a fresh slate for him, because obviously he's always been a team under his own name. Maybe it's the name. Like, as much as you know, Craig is, you know, an absolute legend and a really nice guy. Like, maybe that was what the problem was. Maybe he just needed Robot to say, "Look, we'll put our name on this. Don't worry."
Yeah,
but it's worked out for him.
It has, and it's, you know, I don't know if you guys have read Adam Savage's book, Every Tool is a Hammer. But one of the things Adam talks about pretty heavily, and this goes back to the Mythbusters days, is failure is always an option. Mm-hmm. Failure happens, and failure is your best teacher. Like, you do not walk away from the success with the, like, oh, I learned that lesson. No, you walk away from the failure going, oh, I learned that lesson. Yeah. And that's what Craig did. He really took his lessons and said, how do I not do this again? I'm not going to go back in and try to, you know, do the experiment over again and expect a different result. No, I'm going to go in with a new thing and change the experiment.
Yeah.
So I'm super proud of Craig.
Yeah, it's definitely worked out for him, and maybe we'll continue. I mean, Black Dragon's going to be a big task, because that thing has been kicking ass and taking names. They know how to build a robot.
They built a great robot. They know how to build good robots, and like, that egg beater spins and beats stuff up. You know, they've taken a beating too, but they're still a damn good robot, and they don't give up. Like, it is not a robot that dies in the first 30 seconds. It keeps going all the way through.
You tend to get good fights with them as well. Like, they never put on a boring show. I mean, the fight against Kraken was phenomenal. It was like so back and forward. It you know, genuinely could have gone either way. As much as, you know, Black Dragon did win, you know, Kraken gave as good as it got. The fact that Black Dragon last season as well made it to the top 16, they've shown that they can do this as well. They've beaten their, you know, compatriots in Minotaur in the past. They've really got a really good base. I just wonder if, you know, obviously I know they've probably changed a lot of things internally, but from year to year, you know, maybe people will start to maybe figure out their number. It is, for me, like, there's not much difference between this year and last year, but, you know, sometimes you just can't improve on perfection, can you? Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes it just works.
It is a very tough bot. One of the things that was different, so last year with the Desperado, which we didn't do this year, we did the Desperado in one day. We shot it all in one day. So that was four fights,
grueling,
right? Like, to have to do in one day at that level of competition, which is really impressive. And, you know, the bounties, we did break up. We shot all bounties simultaneously while shooting the tournament. And we would do, you know, like, the first fights of all the 8s at the beginning. And then the next day we might do all the quarters, and, you know, that kind of, like, so we sort of moved through it, but gave people a break. We still had to there was times you still had to fight twice in one day. Usually that's the final, right? That's the end of getting to that last thing. But the fact that they survived their Desperado last season to win and to move on to the 16
against Minotaur as well,
and then to fight in the 16, like, I mean, it was, you know, it's like, this is brutal, and that's impressive. They have a great bot, and they strip it down. Like, I would go back and it would be all these pieces on the floor, but there's so many of them, and they're so quickly, everybody's got a task, and
these teams just give you heart attacks. So you're just like, oh, it's everywhere.
But there's times when I notice that, and I'm like, oh yeah, but I'm not worried. Like Whiplash, they break the robot down after every fight, clean it out, which is one of those things that people need to learn. Bring a vacuum. Lots of little bits of aluminum and steel floating around inside your robot, landing in your speed controllers, are bad things. So the cleaning out of your bot every time is a big deal. And that's sort of like, that's what I witnessed the Black Dragon guys do, is they take it completely apart and make a choice of weapon and assemble it back together for the fight coming up.
Jevin, you've been very quiet. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I was just thinking, from what you're saying, it sounds like the Black Dragon crew are very sort of Formula One race pit team, that they can get it apart, put it back together in record time, and it's good to go.
But yeah, there's so many on their team that they all have tasks. Everybody does their specific thing this one person's going to go take care of all the speed controllers and all the handling of that. And this other person's going to go deal with welding and banging out a bend, and that sort of delegation and splitting up of the tasks to all come back together to bring it all into one thing makes a huge difference.
And the Warrior team, so if you don't follow the Warrior team on social media, they don't even bring their full team to BattleBots. They are a massive team.
They are 300 strong. Yeah.
And they dominate competitions left, right, and centre. So yeah, I think they're going to be solid picks going forwards.
Absolutely. Yeah. You wouldn't want to fight them early on, and I do feel a bit sorry for Craig, but you've got to fight.
Well, this is the test. This is the test. Does all that dropping things off of trucks really pay off this time?
Yes.
Finally.
Exactly.
I mean, it kind of paid off against Witch Doctor. I mean, that bot was still working perfect. Well,
yeah.
Perfect-ish.
It took a beating. Parts did break, but he still had a dealable robot. At
the inside parts were still working. It's just nothing was touching the floor anymore.
He did say on the tail of the tape with Witch Doctor that the side armor is meant to break away as it does, and he's made that as a conscious decision for TV because he wants to see parts flying. You don't want a whole side panel going because that looks bad. It looks like your robot's just been destroyed. Whereas if little chunks are going left, right, and centre, that's more fun. So yeah, that was a design choice. Apparently.
Just give the judges something to like. Oh, that's damage.
Well, yeah.
Or is it? Yeah.
Right. Oh, here we go.
That's an argument for Shatter if ever there was one. We'll get to that later on. And we'll talk about Perfect Phoenix at 27 and Endgame at 6. As nice as it's been to see Perfect Phoenix do as well as it has done this year, it's won 2 fights. That is an old robot now.
Yes.
I'm a very scared man for what will remain of Perfect Phoenix after fighting Endgame because it's... Of course, it's going to be incredible because Tyler is a great driver. We've seen that a couple of times this year already. We've seen exploits in BuggleBots as well. I do fear that Endgame is a little bit of a step above everything it's fought so far, and that it could be the last time we see this version of Perfect Phoenix. At least
it's going to be like when you saw Biohazard. It's funny, It's almost like when you saw Biohazard get its teeth kicked in by both Megabyte and Brutality in short succession, and then that was it. We never saw it again.
Sadly.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
it'd be weird to see it go similarly.
It's been interesting to see the argument of what can an old bot do to the new field. And it turns out this robot, it's pretty solid still. It has its issues, but it has been pretty good in its fights. And yeah, I think if we are going to see it maybe retired, this could well be it.
Yes.
I mean, we all want to see it fight Tombstone before then, of course. But
no.
But I think...
the Padawan learner against the Sith. Well,
you said two names to take out
for the story. Come on.
Maybe Tombstone is the second name to take out Brutality. Who knows?
Ray wouldn't kill a youngling, would he?
No.
Depends on how much Tyler rubs in the fact that he's got a higher seeding or whatever. But
I did witness Ray. I don't remember between which fight. Like he had Perfect Phoenix completely open and he'd taken everything out. It's sort of basically just a box, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But that box, there was no square edge to that box. Everything was tweaked and twisted and centerpieces lifted. He was going to the hydraulic press and just squeezing everything down to reshape his aluminum because it had taken such a beating. And welds were all cracked. With warplanes like the A-10 Warthog, they have to go take this giant titanium thing and shelve it once in a while because it's gone past its lifetime. And because just has seen so much wear and tear. And that's sort of the same, like Perfect Phoenix, how long can it last? You said it perfectly. I was like, this maybe its last hurrah, or it's just going to keep going. Will Ray make a brand new version of it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Does he need Paul's permission? Let's. I mean, it is his robot now.
That's a good point. It is his robot. I mean, Paul actually helped out quite a bit back at while it was still in the shop at Ray's place. Hey, you should be doing this. Check this. Make sure you tweak this, and so Paul was sort of assisting, even though he sold the bot. He was assisting in how to keep it up and running.
Oh, of course. He knows it better than anybody, you would think.
Right.
Yeah, just thinking of Tyler having a team of him, Ray, and Paul Ventimiglia behind his machine. It's pretty scary, isn't it?
Speaking of Paul, we did miss him this year, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. It was.
I hate to gloss over that.
It's nice for television to be able to get a different champion since Paul isn't there, right?
He just won again.
Not right.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what Paul brings back next year. Because I don't think it will probably be the exact same Bite Force, because just what we talked about with Perfect Phoenix, Bite Force has been through quite a bit, and he's not just going to bring back the exact same frame and expect it to last 8 fights.
Mm-hmm.
It's
that final against Witch Doctor.
It was getting
I mean,
close.
honestly, it was. I mean, had Witch Doctor's self-writer not pooped the bed, it might have actually really given him some trouble. There were wedgelets flying everywhere, and that's his whole deal. Once that ground game's gone, you might be able to punt that thing across the arena, but that's the thing is getting around Paul and being able to outdrive him and out wedge game him, because he's got it on a whole different level.
He's always right there. You come at it and he's already got that front end turned around towards you.
Yeah. Super exciting.
Endgame, the opponent for Perfect Phoenix, it has been frustrating in the past, I think it's fair to say, because the potential's been there for so long now. I mean, we spoke about Bite Force briefly there. They had Bite Force stopped for a brief time once upon a time in 2018. Last year didn't quite go to plan. Obviously, they had that amazing fight with Death Roll where Death Roll was doing its thing all around the floor and, eventually losing that fight and lost to Ribbot as well. And it's kind of had a bit of a renaissance ever since the Cobalt fight, really. That was kind of a big shot in the arm, I feel, for them.
Well, as a team, as we talked about with Warrior and with Black Dragon, there's a discipline that was going on in the pits with the Endgame team. Breaking down the robot, cleaning out the robot, checking all components, does everything work right, reassembling, and also making pancakes in the morning right there at the pits. So
the priorities are straight here, clearly.
Pancakes and bacon. Come on.
It's America, come on.
Oh, yeah.
But they had a great showing in those first 3 fights. I think that, even though they lost against Bloodsport, correct?
Yes.
Sorry, there's been so many fights.
No, I can imagine your brain needs a defrag.
Exactly. But their fight against Tombstone was epic. It was so fast and so decisive, and wow. And their last fight they just showed what their bot can do,
Absolutely.
I mean, they're definitely belong in the 32 without
This
it.
is the first time they've been there, in the bracket at all.
It's strange. You think a bot with that backing and a team obviously knows how to build, and they've been around, and it's just strange that this is the first time they've ever cracked the tournament.
There's a couple of bots like that for me this year. Them and Gigabyte is another one.
Yeah, that's another one. Been around the block forever, it seems. And finally, they get a chance to really show their worth.
Well, yeah, because Matt Maxim showed up and was in the pits.
And I'm glad they brought that up in the show. He was there. We all knew he was there.
Yeah, I mean, I was pointing it out constantly to Chris Getty to say, this is wise, because I would go back and Matt would be the one in the robot in the pits working on it. And his way, he's like the NASCAR guy. He's just there in the pits, making it, just doing it right. And he's always the one who has the great quote about, you win fights in the arena, you win tournaments in the pits. That's always been Matt's quote. And it was so clear watching Gigabyte have so much more reliability this year.
Especially after that Copperhead fight at the start as well, when the dome went off.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, we'll move on. We'll get to Gigabyte a little bit later.
We'll get more into Gigabyte in a second.
jumping all over the place.
I know.
I'm just excited. It's top 32 time. Come on,
I know.
it's bracket season. 26 is Kraken and 7 is SawBlaze. Kraken for me has been probably the robot of the year to watch.
Yeah.
Like every fight has just been brilliant. Like the Witch Doctor fight was just well controlled. You know, against Black Dragon, who we've already said, you know, been so dominant in, you know, pretty much everything they do that, you know, Kraken would not die against them. And grabbing huge, like, what? How do you do that?
I mean, he told me in the pits, like, this is what I'm going to do. And I looked at him like, I was like, Matt, I love you. Like, you are like always up for everything. And that's one of my favorite things. Like, you could tell Matt that his first fights are Tombstone, Bite Force, and Witch Doctor. And he'd be like, okay, I'm ready. Like he never shies away from a fight with a big dog ever. Like Matt that's why he's here. And to tell me that he was going to grab the blade at the center and then release flame, I was like, okay, that's great. I love the idea, but you know, no plan survives the encountering with the enemy. And that's not going to happen. And also when he welded on the harpoon, I was like, ooh, that's just going to bend, because all I could think about in my head was watching Chomp a few years back fight Huge. And I know, because I work with Yasha and Zoe, I know what it took to bend the AR-500 arms into the shape to make Chomp's hammer, how much of the forklift was used as the pressure to be able to make that happen. To watch that turn into a pretzel, I was like, oh, there is no way. Like, and when Kraken gets out there with that little hook, it's just going to be bent and trashed. And he proved me completely wrong. And like, he even got a good hook into the wheels and pulled.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, yes, this is working.
I'm glad you share our passion for Kraken this season.
Yes, the passion for Kraken. Like Matt is probably the most improved over all seasons. Like he has really shown something that we did not expect from the first time when he showed up.
Yeah, he said that too. He's like, yeah, we didn't bring a very good robot the first time. It looked good, but looking at the one they have now, they're like, this is the one. Get that. We never had that one. No.
Yeah. Build what? I didn't build that. That's on me. You can't prove that was me.
Nope. No picture evidence.
As for SawBlaze, mixed
That's
feelings.
another one of my favorites.
It's beautiful. It's honestly the green and black look. We you know, it's just the way it looks is amazing. I think this year though, I don't think disappointing is the right word for SawBlaze, because they haven't been, because you know, they did so well against Whiplash, and obviously, you know, they dominated Rusty, but that fight against Uppercut makes me think, you know, does it have it in it to win? And I feel like that's why Jameson's there. I mean, I know Uppercut is exceptional, of course. Like, it's kind of hard to explain, but for me, that fight made me think, if it just comes up against something of that caliber again, then what can it do?
He needs to channel his featherweight energy, and just whatever Megatron does, SawBlaze needs to do. Yeah, you know.
Jameson is one of the people that has matured so much since going back to ABC. Like back then when he was with Charles, and then when he brought his version of sort of the dustpan version of SawBlaze, and his loss there, and then realizing, wow, maybe this wasn't the right choice. We're in a different game. He has grown as a person, as a builder. It's such a treat to watch. You know, I feel like Will always calls me bot dad, because I just feel like they're like watching my children grow up, you know, because I've just been around for so long, and to watch people come in and who they become through the years of being in this and JMO is just like, he builds really good robots, and he really thinks it through. And he sends me, you know, he always sends me things like, here's what we're thinking about doing. I'm really worried about this. Like when I'm calling him and saying, what's the state of the bot? And he's worried about the smallest thing. Like he's got the rest of the robot is in such good shape that he's now in such fine minutia details that he's worrying about. And he's in the state of like, oh, I'm not sure if we're going to even make it because I've got to do this. And I'm like, dude, that's nothing. Like, what are you worried about? You've got a robot that really works. I think he can do it.
Yeah.
I think even though he just got torn apart with Uppercut, he will not walk away from that fight and just assume if he has to fight somebody like that again, that he's going to do the same thing. He won't. He will have made the proper adjustments and changes, and he's got a billion different front plows and different little forks and things that he brings because he wants to be adaptable for each fight.
And he said on Facebook, I think he underestimated the speed of Uppercut.
He won't make the same mistake again, will he?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No good builder will.
No, they won't. I mean, like everybody who paid attention is going to be like, okay, I have to attack this in a certain way. And I think that's why Jake won, right? I mean, like Jake saw how he needed to approach Uppercut. I mean, there was a couple of moments when he fired and his arm was up.
Yeah.
Right there next to that weapon spinning. Like it was, my heart was like, oh my God, this is going to be ugly. And he got it back down. And it happened like twice, but most of the time he always got a grab. And he was aware of what Uppercut could dish.
Yeah, I think a lot of people maybe underestimated what it could do. Like even after the Gemini punting out of the arena, like even still,
great.
It was so good.
That was like in American football, making a catch at the 1 yard line off the kickoff and running 99 yards. Like that's how
So
far
exciting.
that ball went. You know, like Gemini launched across the whole field.
it was incredible. But, like,
But it was only 125 pounds.
exactly
True.
only
Yes.
125. You know, you can't say, oh, it's going to do the same thing to a full heavyweight, and it did eventually. But
It did.
it did.
So silly.
Well, again, we'll get to that a little bit later on. I'll say it a little bit later. We've already discussed Uppercut. What am I
We
talking
already
about?
discussed Uppercut. We
Yeah.
just come back. You know,
Yeah.
we're all over the place.
Yeah, it's good.
Back to the charts. Where were we?
25
All
and
right.
8 is where
25
we're
and
at. Which is huge, and Whiplash, a rematch from last year.
Yeah.
Which, if anything, if last year was anything to go by, I'm excited to see these two fight again because it was great to watch. Again, troubled season for Huge. Obviously, the fight against Hydra, difficult to kind of judge where they're at. Mammoth really surprised them, I think, considering, they improved Huge quite a lot. And I think the fact that they just got caught out maybe by the size of, I know, kind of difficult to say the size of Mammoth caught them out because it's huge, but like, well, it's not huge. It's you know what I mean. The fact that Mammoth is so big compared to Huge, I think that kind of caught them out, and
I think it's a case of in that fight.
it was a
you
1 in a
look
million
at-
shot as well.
Yeah, you look at the Mammoth Huge fight. Whenever you see a robot going to fight Huge, they've always tried to work out a way of fighting it, and it's a case of how do I approach this? And for the first time, I think in a long time, Huge have looked at Mammoth and gone, "Huh?
How do we fight this?"
Exactly. I mean Mammoth and Huge was the two of the chaos robot gods fighting each other in the arena. But a smaller normal robot has to really think about how do they approach Huge? Where do they approach Huge? Going back to, let's say, like Ice Wave, that was perfect for fighting Huge, right? UHMW wheels against a giant spinning blade. There's no way. Like any catch on a wheel, the wheel isn't going to bend. It's just going to get cut. And so that's what had happened back then in that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Pardon me if I don't remember exactly which season. So people have to sort of think about what is the right attack on Huge. Kraken obviously did the right attack. They did one of the best attacks, which was grab the blade and stop the blade. And of course, you could say Hydra did the right attack by keeping it all arm's length, But Whiplash, that's a tough combo. I mean, yes, Whiplash does have the ability to have their arm with their weapon up at a different height, which gives them much more variability of what they can do with their robot compared to, let's say, a small drum or something. But it's going to be it's not going to be an easy fight for Huge, no matter what. Like, because you're fighting Matt Vasquez, right?
I mean, we spoke to him literally yesterday as we were recording this. He's just this season as well. Like we kind of said, has the fact that the machine been quite consistent over the last 2 years helped him? And I think it really has. I mean, okay, yes, the first fight against SawBlaze, there wasn't much he could really do, but since then it's just been one-way traffic in both of their fights.
The thing that I've known Matt and his family since way back in 2001 or whenever we first did SawBlaze. Like I met Jeff Vasquez back then and knew the kids. Like they were kids. They were teeny little kids back in the day. And to watch him grow up has been amazing. But the key that I always saw during this season was the robot is in such good shape, like in between fights and the work they do in between fights, that gives Matt the confidence to drive the way he does, because he's never worrying about, will my speed controller be pushed to an edge? Am I going to overheat those motors? They don't worry about that because they've set their robot up to be able to be driven as hard as it's going to be driven by Matt without blowing up in 3 minutes. Yep. Yes, things do flare up. They have problems. Things die. It does happen to them. But I think Matt's confidence in the bot shines through in the driving that he does.
Yeah, I think that he did say yesterday that he can, dial it down if he needs to as well. If he thinks, okay, maybe I should probably cool it for a little bit. And I think we saw that in the Valkyrie fight towards the end. It did kind of slow down towards the end. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The fact that he always just seems to keep on top of the opponent as well. Like sometimes, okay, you watch a fight and you think, okay, they're on top of them, but there's always a way back in. I never think that when I watch Whiplash. There's always they just smother them.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Paul briefly about Bite Force sort of always being right there at the right time. I think Matt does the same thing. Matt, he is so quick that he's never giving the opponent a chance to get away. Like he's always on that moment. And even when he gets flipped or is offset in some way, the way that they design that arm, he just reaches back and hits them from behind. I mean, that's such an amazing thing to sort of be able to witness that and go, holy crap, even with his back to them, he was able to do something. I mean, go ahead.
The SawBlaze fight, we said there wasn't much more they could do to SawBlaze, but the hits they did get on SawBlaze, had SawBlaze not armored up in the right place, they'd have hit very important things. They'd have hit the switches. They'd have hit the weapon belt very close to that. So yeah, it was a closer fight than it looked on camera.
Yes.
It was very dominant, and I think Whiplash, the changes they've made this season to put sort of smaller wheels on bigger disc. I think these are changes that he's made having fought the likes of Huge, where they've lost a wheel or they've had the spinner go down. He's going to be more prepared to fight Huge this time around than he was last time. And bearing in mind he won last time, it's
pretty ominous, isn't it?
Happen.
It is pretty ominous for Huge. Yeah. 24 and 9 are SubZero and Valkyrie. I'm really happy for SubZero because
me too.
Especially after last season as well.
Yeah.
Jerry, it was such a sad thing to watch Jerry lose so many times through the preseasons before. And, to have him retire and give up SubZero to somebody else. And now to see where we are with SubZero is just like, whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, it is like a little Hot Wheel out there driving around and doing its thing. It's like, it's been impressive this season. And something that gets lost is people aren't always paying attention because it's kind of not super major, but Spitfire has gotten hit by people's weapons, has gotten knocked around by flying robots, and flown right after that.
It did one of these where it got hit by something. It did like a full sideways somersault and then just went off and did its own thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it get hit and fall to the floor and then take back off again. It's just so, as well as you're watching the whole. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's really something that it's good when it's the last drone standing. I mean, all the drones came in 2016. Spitfire is the only one that is still going because it is just the most resilient little thing. I mean, it's been
ground. It went through the screws.
It's been through the screws. It's been ripped to shreds.
Oh, that was so brutal.
It's still here and it's still going. Yes, they probably rebuilt it in between that, but
of course.
And also the flying. I mean, the actual controlment of that thing is really pretty impressive.
I've driven robots before. I've driven beta-weights, heavyweights, what have you. Flying drones is weird because they don't.
It's a whole nother dimension. You have a third dimension to worry about now. Instead of just driving on a plane, you have to worry about height.
Worst.
and that box, when you close those doors, it's a giant box of chaos, right? Like everything that happens in there. And so there's air currents flying around in there. There is stuff. It is not easy to fly. I mean, it's hard enough to fly a drone without wind, let alone anything pushing you around and trying to target with it while you're being pushed. Like, blows me away. I'm super happy that SubZero is where it is. Like, it made me really excited.
From where it started, and I a lot of these robots that made the tournament, I kind of went back into their robot profiles from years past. SubZero it's just from where it started with that silver box with that big front plow and it getting its teeth kicked in its very first fight,
right?
To now basically being our Bronco replacement in the tournament, where we have this because there's really not many flippers that do what they do, where it's like an uppercutting puncher,
right?
I mean, if you're not Team Inertia Labs, you know, it's very much a very niche weapon design, but they've done really well. It's so powerful that it even ripped its own actuators out. But
and still it kept flipping.
And still kept exactly.
Yeah. It was incredible. They're going to need that resilience though. Valkyrie this season for me has been. I mean, obviously, I know it lost to Whiplash, but it was. I mean, that fight with Rotator by itself was, I think, enough to get it in because. 3 minutes.
It's one of my favorite fights ever, that fight with Rotator. Spark wheelies for days. You know, I mean, like, I love watching Valkyrie stand on end and the wheel is just shredding the floor and throwing sparks everywhere it goes as it sort of rides that wheelie. Oh, so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to think of when they first showed up with their first Valkyrie and it was tenuous. Like, I mean, it was hard to keep it running. And now they have this solid machine that really is well made and durable.
It's so hard. And they've, you know, credit to them. They've really gone away and, you know, even the maneuverability and the driving of it, like you watched it when it first came in, it kind of, the grip of it just struggled to kind of point it going forwards. They just, it wasn't really playing nice for them. But now you watch it, you just think they're completely in control of this robot. Like they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they hit hard. Like, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, what if you look at the fight they did? Like the armor on the other robot was just cut through. Like there was a giant gash. It was not easy on Whiplash. Like
it's the sort of hit that Tombstone does, and it's crazy. The power in Valkyrie, where it, as you said, where it's come from since 2018 to where it is now, is such a different beast. It's not only sort of better looking as well, I feel, with the new sort of Star Destroyer look.
Oh yeah.
But the whole actual build and how durable and how powerful it is going forward, it is going to be one to watch, I think.
Oh yes, it is definitely it is a destructive bot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's two more in Witch Doctor and Skorpios at 23 and 10 respectively. Witch Doctor at 23. I mean, who would have thought that after last year, right?
Right.
I think Witch Doctor's going to win the whole thing.
Yes, that's nice. Like,
because
did you write that down?
I did. I mean, I've made my bracket prediction. I think Witch Doctor's because
I've yet to make mine. I'm still tenuous.
I'll tell you why. Because their weapon's not going to break, and because their weapon's not going to break, they're just going to beat everyone because that's what it did last year.
Where they were last year,
exactly.
With,
and I think,
with improvements to sort of everything on the inside, and I have them also going very far. I haven't quite got them to win, but
it's going to be. I think it'll be there or thereabouts because purely for the fact that Witch Doctor last season was just so good. Like the fact that every single fight it was the only thing that could stop it was Bite Force, and Bite Force struggled. Like it was, it was so impressive, and the fact that they've improved it. And okay, yes, the start of the season, the weapon kept falling to pieces and what have you, but they've obviously realised, okay, we can't use the same material. Let's, they did that whole amazing story of getting the 600
that happened so fast. Like you can't believe how quickly they got all that to work out. That was really impressive to be able to make that happen and to sort of understand, like, wow, we got all of these weapon teeth from the same place, and we got them hardened to all the same Rockwell. This is probably going to keep happening. We need to really rethink what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And so they got some AR 400. The thing they don't like about it is it's not sharp after a few hits.
Right. Yes. It loses its tooth. Sure.
Okay. So Witch Doctor hitting with a blunt weapon versus a sharp weapon, or you think you're still going to survive?
Yeah.
Not really. Like, it's hard.
Yeah.
What the term blunt force trauma? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
A whole new name to it, basically.
Yeah.
I do feel a bit sorry for Skorpios because they've been through the ringer already this year with who they fought, and obviously
It's their first vert.
it is their first vert.
They have shown themselves to be a dominable robot too.
Yeah.
Skorpios has really come a long way from its very early beginnings as just a sawbot to what it does now and how well Zach drives.
Yeah.
Even with bent rickety wheels and like all the things he suffers through, and yet he still keeps going.
It's come a long way from being the robot that we remembered for getting stuck in the screws.
Yes.
And that was so disheartening because I was so excited to see a robot. We had 2 articulated saw weapons that year in SawBlaze and Skorpios. And Red Devil, dang it. That's one of my favorites too. I love Jerome's machine. I wanted to buy it and I couldn't.
Jerome built a better Ronin than I ever could. So yes.
I mean, I think Skorpios for me is just, it's so unfortunate that the draws kind of panned out this way because their run so far this season has been Bloodsport, Perfect Phoenix, Tombstone, and Witch Doctor. That's just
what a world.
And if they win,
yeah,
they'll then fight SawBlaze or Kraken.
Like, they could have a rematch against Kraken.
I mean,
How about that?
Oh God, I would love that. It would be great.
Yeah,
it's the poor guys.
It is an insane season.
Yeah,
like, it is an insane. It is for me when I walked away from there. I felt this was the best season we've ever done. Like, it was just, the fights were exquisite. Everything really panned out to be an amazing season for the show.
I can see why. I mean, it's so far. We thoroughly enjoyed covering it. It's been brilliant to watch.
Yeah.
Next up is 22 and 11, Rotator and Jackpot. We spoke to both of those teams actually.
Yes, we have
this year. Rotator for me, I think their 2 losses that they had. I mean, the Valkyrie loss
are brutal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the beta one. I'm still so conflicted about the beta loss.
It's tough.
There's so much to unpack.
It's difficult because with
beta loss now.
Yes. Because beta has a hard time firing its weapon in motion rather than full stop. They get more of their hit from being at full stop and magnets to the floor, and we saw what happens when they don't do that.
Setup though, where they can fire it at a lower power and they can move, but it takes away from them. Yeah,
right. Well, it did jump against Rusty. That did happen. So I mean, we know it can fire without sucking to the floor, but that fight, obviously that's not the most contentious, but it was that wasn't even close at the time.
That was such an amazing thing because they actually cut to me and said, "Peter, what did you think?" before the judges went with it. And I had said, "I believe this is Rotator's fight because the hammerhead was gone. That was the most damage we witnessed. Mm-hmm. And Rotator, even though we could say that Beta was controlling, I felt that Rotator's best attack was to get on top of Beta. Yeah. Like, that's where it wanted to be because Rotator had an undercutting weapon, right? Yeah. So
where is it the most dangerous?
So being up there was not all detrimental to Rotator, right? Rotator was not always being scooped as much as he wanted it to be there. So I called it for Rotator. And of course it went the other way. Yeah. And then Will comes running down from his stands to yell at me like, "What the hell are you doing? How can you be making this decision?" And I'm like, I am not the judge. I didn't call it. I called it for Rotator.
I can so visualize that happening. Like him, like Roadrunner down with the smoke but peeling away.
It was completely. And he just came right into my face like, "What the hell are you making that decision for?" I'm like, A,
it wasn't me.
There's 3 judges to make that decision. I don't make that decision. And B, I called it for Rotator.
I think that no one will ever forget the face of Will Bales after that fight. It's just
immortalized.
Yeah, exactly.
It was so good. Jackpots, on the other hand.
Yeah.
I think
those guys.
What a story.
Everyone had they didn't have Jackpot marked for great things. They were quite a fast turnaround. They're sort of first year competing on this scale.
Were you surprised at how good they were?
I was blown away at how strong. I mean, it is, if you sort of look closely at it, it is almost a death roll. Like, it's
if you squint,
garish based, and it's got a big spinning thing, and
even the colors.
Yeah, it's true. Green, red, great. And I wasn't totally sure because I went and looked and I was like, oh man, it's a bunch of welded stuff and like, how good is this be? No, they fucking, sorry.
No,
they
go ahead. We put money on these podcasts, don't you worry. You say what you want to.
They fucking hit hard.
And it does. And even the fight against LockJaw, like I had LockJaw 7 days out of 7 winning that fight, and
it's Donald. Why wouldn't you? Yeah.
The fact that they've taken on 2 huge names in the sport in Ghost Raptor and LockJaw and utterly thrashed one of them and had a really, really strong finishing against the other. It was, utterly shocking to me. I think I certainly underestimated this team coming in.
I think we all did. Like knowing what they spent to get there, like how small of a budget they actually were. It was like, oh my God, these guys won't make it. And then witnessing it in its first fight was like, oh, I think I better rework my paperwork here. Like I don't know if I made the right choice. And then it was like, oh, glitter for the win. Like, of course, the Jackpot's coming in. Let's go with Jackpot.
Yeah. So. No, they've been thoroughly entertaining this year. I don't hold high hopes for them against Rotator, honestly, but
we'll see.
Hey, look, we said the same thing about LockJaw, didn't we? So you never know.
Yeah.
Well, you did anyway.
Well,
I'd love to go back and watch what we said about Jackpot when we first saw it, because I'm sure we really were rough on it. Well, maybe we were. Who knows?
We'll hang our heads in shame later in this season. How about that? When it wins the whole thing, obviously. Then
it's one of those robots that we're glad to be proved wrong.
Yeah,
of course.
Yes, that's the same way. That's how I felt too. I mean, very similar to Rusty in a way. I never thought it would survive 3 minutes in a fight. And yet he does. Like, the fact that he just kept getting back up again and driving was so impressive that the robot could survive that kind of abuse that he took from things like SawBlaze and from Beta.
Justice for Rusty.
Yeah.
Should have been in the 32. God.
Seat number 36 or something.
Right.
Oh, dearie me. A few more matchups to go. Next up is Tombstone and Mad Catter at 21 and 12. Tombstone down at 21.
Wow.
Who would have thought, huh?
Yeah, I know. And this, I feel a lot of people are underestimating also Mad Catter. Like,
oh yeah,
Martin is he's been amazing. This robot has really shown what it can do, and it's been an impressive bot to watch it go forward. So I think it's going to be one hell of a bloody fight for sure. Yeah. It will be a knockdown drag out.
Yeah, I think Cat King kind of proved it to us a little bit in China.
As well.
Honestly,
anybody who's underestimating Mad Catter needs to go and see Cat King in King of
Definitely.
Bots, because it hits hard and it is such a good robot.
And Calvin's a great driver as well. We similarly did it Norwalk Havoc with Lynx. So it's a lot of small pieces coming together, a lot of experience picked up from lots of different areas, and it's all come together. And it's kind of gone under the radar a little bit. I know it went 3-0, but okay, yes, maybe the win against Fusion wasn't massively convincing, and the fight against Malice, was it a fight? Kinda. They hit, I suppose. But you can't...
Hey, you fight who you fight.
Exactly. You can't underestimate them, and I think Ray will be very conscious of that. Does Tombstone make it through here? I mean...
I genuinely don't know.
It's so close.
I genuinely don't know.
You got to remember, Tombstone still hits.
Nothing. There's very few robots that you could say hit as hard as that robot, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, right now, the probably the 3 hardest hitting robots in the field are Tombstone, Uppercut, and Valkyrie.
Yeah,
is what I would say are the ones delivering the biggest punch.
This is Pete's weapon power ranking like we saw in the season.
And so you can never count Ray out. Like you just unless you end game him out of the arena, you can't say that he's just done
or light him on fire with which is what this one did.
Yeah.
I mean, as well as that, you've got to think with Tombstone, like Ray has won so many events in the past. He has a knack of just pulling out the bag. Like he knows how to do it. He's done it before. I don't
think any robot has as many fights under their belt as Tombstone.
Yeah.
In all of BattleBots, like that, Tombstone probably has, because Tombstone was fighting his last rites long before in Robo games, like multiple fights, so many fights.
Yeah. No, you underestimate Ray at your peril, really. Like the guy just he just wins for fun, doesn't he? Let's be real here.
And it's so funny because like everybody thinks of him as like Darth Vader, yet he's
the nicest guy.
He is the greatest guy. Like Ray, I've drank so many beers with Ray, and he's so enjoyable to hang out with. Like I love Ray.
There's a moment in Bounty Hunters, again, we can't talk much about it at the minute, but where he's busy congratulating the other team or saying hello to the other team, and it's the Chris Rose interview bit at the end where they're doing sort of fight breakdown, and he says, "No, I'm talking to them at the minute." Such a personal guy.
Yeah,
he's Ray.
Yeah, he is Ray. There's nothing quite like him out there, is there?
No.
20 and 13 is Ribbot and Beta. Obviously, we've discussed Beta a little bit already with the whole Rotator shindig. My favourite robot ever is Terahertz, and
going way back, yes,
yeah. Well, even
a little bit in the reboot.
Yeah, it came back, and obviously Beta very much shares DNA with Terahertz and what have you, being built by John. Mm-hmm. It's hurt me so much. Like I feel not disappointed, because that's the wrong word, because I'm so glad to see Beta back in BattleBots, because I think Beta's been missed when they've been playing in China with Tanshi. I think that's very clear. I don't know what it is, but obviously I was expecting more good hits. That's all it was. And I think I understand exactly the reason why they haven't done, flailing with the axe like they did back in 2016.
Mm-hmm. But one of the most watched fights against Lucky on YouTube on ABC's.
It's been nice having them back regardless. I just feel wanting more, but I think we're going to get that in the tournament at least. It's
not BattleBots without Team Hertz, honestly. Even back, I mean, to be honest, I almost see Killer Hertz as a BattleBots machine more than a Robot Wars machine, because it was just the fights it had here, dare I say, were just more memorable than the ones it had over there.
I mean,
aside from the one where he just drove in the pit.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was one season where he just drives straight in the pit.
Best driver in America.
That sounds like something I would have done, but okay.
Anyway.
As for Ribbot, Green Bite Force.
Ribbot, I remember when they first arrived, and one of the things that did blow me away was the completely swappable full weapon systems, like the way that they sort of built the modularity. And me coming from being Team Sinister with Satrakian and the Master and Ronin, we had built our robots to be able to be, okay, I'm going to make an interchangeable clamp that I could swap out my weapon and go for the new thing. Like that was always in my thinking, was modularity. And I love seeing Ribbot sort of really tightly compact billets of aluminum with all the motors and speed drawers in them, and they just bolt on with like 6 giant, grade 8 5/8 bolts. It's a really fun to watch. And also they're doing something technical, like Chomp is a big advancement. Mm-hmm. We did give a little bit of shout out to what they're doing. But
telemetry.
It can't be underestimated about how important it is to be able to see into your robot and go, oh, that weapon motor is getting way beyond its thermal capacity. Let's back off. The ability to know that from that quickly, rather than at the point of,
it's smoke.
Oh, is that smoke coming out of my robot? Oops, maybe I should back off now.
It's a huge tactical advantage.
Yes.
I feel the Ribbot team have learned a couple of lessons this season. Firstly, don't go for the mini-bot first.
No. I got so upset watching that. I'm like, what are you doing?
And the second is perhaps that last hit. I know they were trying to go for a big showing with Axolotl, but that last hit nearly finished them. So they need to be careful, and they need to.
They didn't need that hit. Yeah.
It was
they
cool,
already
though.
had won. But
it was for show, wasn't it?
It was gratuitous. Yeah, gratuitous violence.
But hey, it nearly landed in Chris and Kenny's lap, so it was great. Like, it was right there in their corner, right up against the rail right there. That was good.
Absolutely. We have 3 more fights to go. Next up is Shatter and LockJaw at 19 and 14. For me, Shatter is just the most stunning looking robot in the entire field, and we spoke to Adam a couple of weeks ago. Like the way that he kind of put himself across, and the way that he explained, okay, I've done this for this reason, I've done this for this reason. Everything is thought out with Shatter, and like it's not even a conventional hammer. Like, the way that they've gone with the Mechanism wheels, Jevon, I got it right this time. Not Omni wheels, it's slightly different.
Top lad.
Right.
And the hammer and just the ablative armor, it's all tiny little pieces that have all added up to make Shatter, for me, as well as Kraken this year, the two that I most look forward to watching in the arena, because you're going to get a great fight. They're going to go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I was texting Adam right after his fight aired, going, I just have to tell you, and I don't always compliment the builders enough, how much I enjoy watching Shatter drive. I love watching it side shift. Like, it is so much fun watching a robot that can translate wherever it wants to, like, and keep its nose to its opponent. Like that, I love seeing control on that level. It's so much fun.
There's very few robots that have successfully done it. Like I remember speaking with him with the Alcoholic Stepfather. It's one of the most fun looking robots, and it shoots fire. Why not? Yeah. It's just so silly. And I like how, and he said it in our episode with us, where he likes to kind of play mind games a little bit, where he doesn't just drive straight into his square. He side shuffles into his square. It's showman to the end.
Yes,
and obviously with the shattering bits, even though he took them off for his third fight to be more serious and more, all right, I'm going to actually really full send this. Yeah. But I can still think of that first fight when he fires that hammer and just the pieces just go everywhere. Like, I know. This is just too cool.
So he's another one who's done an interview for not Behind the Bots, wrong one. For
Tape
recently. Tape. And he showed off how he controls the strafing, and before I knew how that worked, I thought, man, that must be complicated. And now knowing how it works, I'm possibly more confused than I was before. He has a little thing he turns on the top of his. Yeah.
It's got a rotational knob on the end of the stick. Yeah,
it's crazy. The
I can fully understand now, really, to do that as well.
I can fully understand now that he doesn't think he could go back to driving a normal robot again because of how he drives Shatter. It is just, it must be quite intuitive now to drive like that and to start turning things, and it's crazy, it's complicated, but I love it.
It's like driving a robot on an ice rink.
I mean, we all love Shatter because as I said, even just down to the way it looks, like it just, as you said earlier, Pete, when applying, it has, a robot has to have a bit of almost texture to it, and Shatter is a perfect example of that because, like, it's got so many different angles. You don't know where to look. It's great.
Right. And something that, yes, it was devastating to have him come in without the shards on the side because it's so beautiful, right? And the way it bounces light. I mean, all those things for as a television person, like, you watch that robot, it's pretty brilliant to watch. But from a win to go into, let's call it the stealth mode, the all black version, right? One of the things that not everybody's always paying attention to that you don't see. So a judge will watch, let's take Rotator Valkyrie. Remember how much sparks there were? Well, all those sparks get seen as damage.
Yeah.
You don't see saws and weapons cutting UHMW black or raw aluminum. You don't witness that at all because you can't really see it until you get up close, go, oh, wow, that was really damaged a lot. So it doesn't look like anything's happening when they're fighting some kind of cutting weapon. And that's a great ploy, right? That keeps you from getting that initial feeling of, oh my God, I saw so many sparks, that must have been damage, to, wow, I didn't see anything happen to that other robot.
It does certainly pay off as well. As for LockJaw as well, I do want to brush on that quickly.
He's another one he's like the grandfather of BattleBots in a way. He's been around so long. We've seen him evolve, both his robots and he's become Donald like the sage.
We've been friends since 95, right? Since he first brought Tazbot mainly to fight Mark with the Master. Like, that was his thinking, was, I've got to defeat this robot. How am I going to do it? And he made Tazbot. And we've been friends ever since. And so Donald is, I don't think he's had the best season. Like, I don't think this has been one of his better ones. He's definitely performed much better in the past. But you can't discount LockJaw. Like, he always sort of pulls himself out of situations you're like, oh, he's never going to survive that. And he just gets his robot to do a thing that you're like, how the hell did you do that? Well, I articulated the jaws and then I moved this back wheel. And like, I've seen him drive on two wheels on opposite corners. You know, like his robot be able to get across the floor. Like it's amazing.
The one thing about this version of LockJaw, and I think ever since he switched to the vert, and he's just, I remember hearing a story where he is overvolting his motors to just stupid levels, and the robot itself kind of becomes a smoke machine a little bit. And I know that does hurt in the judge's eyes, and also hurts for him not being able to drive his robot the way he wants it to. Exactly, to win. So I'm curious to see how he takes on this bracket, because there's going to be more fights. Say he gets all the way through. It's not 16, it's 32. So you really need to make sure that your robot can actually last all of those fights. So
you don't want to be swapping motors for every fight. And every speed controller. I mean, that's just thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
It is one of those things about knowing when to back off, or how far are you going to put the robot's performance, and where do you think, okay, like we kind of talked about with Whiplash, they sort of have pulled back on some of the going as fast as they possibly can to let's have a robot that survives.
Sure.
And I think Donald almost needs to relearn that because of the smoke that keeps coming out of his robot.
Yeah. It makes me sad because I'm like, I know his potential. I mean, he's a championship winning bot builder. Yeah. I mean, there's no taking that away.
Yeah, he's won it so many times.
My favorite fight of all time that I was ever in was my fight against Dissector. He kicked my ass, but it was the best. Like, he just took me all around the arena and beat the shit out of Ronan. And it was the best. Because I fought Donald, right? Like, I mean, how much more can you ask? Dissector was the championship robot. I lost to a champion. That was great.
Sometimes that's all, sometimes you can say, I lost the best robot there. You can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah.
Penultimate matchup is Tantrum and Fusion. Tantrum, for me, has been a real unsung hero this year because obviously the fight against Valkyrie they were massively on top of until they just kind of pooped out and that was it. And the other two fights, they did what they needed to do. They were clinical and won fairly comfortably. I mean, the fact is another one of those robots where you look a couple of years ago and you think, that's never going to amount to anything. It's it's going to flip burgers for the rest of its career because that's what it did in 2018. And you look at it now and you think, oh, this is something quite special.
Yeah, Aaron has come a long way. I mean, I think Tantrum, this is definitely the best Tantrum we've ever seen. Tantrum is just performing at a level that blew all of our minds. He's really got it dialed in. It is solid. It can take a beating. And it's actually delivering the punch that we were hoping for.
Quite literally.
It's got the same style drive as Hypershock, I believe. It can do the sort of driving that Hypershock does, which is scary to think about because Hypershock just runs rings around robots. So, yeah, this is definitely not one to underestimate. I think Tantrum is such a fun design of robot. It's you got the fists on the Shreemec, which we have seen the Shreemec going yet, haven't we?
Yeah, it's all fight against Atom, didn't it?
It's a shame we haven't got the flamethrower fists on there, but you do what you need to do to get through the season, and Tantrum is doing what it needs to do. It is taking names, and it's, as they said in the previous episode, it's peaked at the exact right time.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, they hit their stride.
I mean, he has the ability to go pretty damn far in the 32.
Oh yeah,
I agree. Fusion. Where do we stand on Fusion? Because it's been a bit of a mixed bag. As much as they've won two fights and they lost the one which they were winning, I think, against Mad Cow, the hits they were dishing out were something fierce. I always feel like it's a bit of a ticking time bomb because if it turns a certain way, like we've seen what it's done with, particularly against War Easy, the one where it hits it and then just flies off in, it doesn't even know what direction it's going in. It's ridiculous the amount of energy that thing's got going for it, but I also think at the same time, if that connects well, you are in trouble.
Yeah.
It has vast amounts of power.
It's a wacky
vast amounts of power.
All that power is contained in a giant or a little teeny box about this big, all as heat. And it usually comes out as fire.
Yes. We did see that in its fight against Mad Catter. It just it just didn't. It couldn't keep the smoke in,
It's
unfortunately.
the perfect thing for a robot, a fireworks box, because eventually it might
You said
just catch
this,
fire.
yeah. It was amazing.
Thermal dissipation is fairly poor. It turns it from like, oh, I'll just go to these heat sinks to, oh, I'll just catch fire. Yeah.
There's no in between here.
No.
And our last matchup, but by no means least, is Gigabyte and Malice. Gigabyte, as we've kind of already said, Matt Maxon coming into the team has really helped that team out quite a lot.
Yes.
And I think for me, Gigabyte's having a little bit of a renaissance this year. Like it kind of the 2 years it's come back since the reboot. Obviously, we saw it as Invader, in ABC, but since it's been Gigabyte again, I've always been left a little bit wanting. I've like the fight against Minotaur last year was excellent. That was them doing really, really well, but there was still that little extra bit it could go. And this year, like I've seen Gigabyte back to its best, I think.
Yeah.
Aside from fight number 1.
Right.
That was an exceptional fight, though, with Copperhead doing.
That was a
crazy
special
stuff.
moment.
I think
Yeah.
with Gigabyte, again, it's one where you can look to its appearances in other media. So when it was Megabyte over in China, that robot does some awful damage to other teams, and it is a really powerful machine and definitely not one to underestimate. Gigabyte hits hard, and as they've said multiple times in different places, the spinning mass of the shell, it's a heavier weapon than something like Tombstone, which means that they can have more of a hit almost. There's more power behind it, certainly, and yeah, it is a scary thing. And now that they've got the new pole and everything sorted, it is a force to be reckoned with.
With the little heart that they carried over from the Chinese robot. I like that the little thing on that little cap it shows sometimes.
Yeah.
It's the only full body spinner in the 32, isn't it?
Yeah. Shred didn't make it, and neither did Kronos.
Yeah.
Red. Shed.
Captain Shederator.
Stop it.
And obviously Malice, first time for them competing at heavyweight level with this robot, but obviously they've all got experience throughout the team at various different weight levels. Obviously Bunny's been on many different teams in the
Every
past.
team under the sun.
Yeah, she's been around for a while. Yeah.
Back with Rex and bouncing to Shatter. And
Yeah.
But even before that, she was at RoboGames.
That's true. Yep.
Made in the background, doing lots of sort of making sure everything happens and runs.
Mhm.
She's been around robot events for quite a long time.
That pretty much brings us to the end of the round of 32. I have to
Holy
say,
crap, that was an hour and 45 minutes. I'm so
did.
sorry, guys. I apologize. I talked too much.
Great.
This
so
was
this is going to love
the
it.
deep dive that I wanted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I have to say,
What-
Pete,
yeah.
thank you so much for coming on and just talking robots with us because, obviously, I know you are I suppose now a TV presenter, if you like, but you are, for me at least, you kind of that very good go-between between the two areas of, robot combat, the presenting style, and of course you've built robots in the past. It's very refreshing to have a builder side put towards the audience, which you don't normally get apart from the kind of little 5-minute segments that you get in between fights. So
and the interviews, which you can only do so much there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but it's actually been a joy having you on, and thank you for bringing a lot of insight this season. I think your edition's been really, really good, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get to see it a bit more later on this year.
So, Stephen, did I change any of your picks now for how you want to do your 32 bracket?
Right. Yeah. I'm going to have to watch this back. I'll watch this back on like 1.5 speed, and then I'll
watch
I'll
my
get back with you on
eyebrows,
that.
right? Ooh,
Right,
he raised his
absolutely.
eyebrow in that moment.
Yeah. Good thing I'm not betting money on this, hey?
Absolutely not. As I said, I hope everyone else has enjoyed this as well, because listening at home, because honestly, this has been a real joy for me. Like, you can probably, obviously the viewers at home can't see my face, but I can see my face. I'm just like thoroughly enjoying this. So
Yeah.
Again, Pete, I can't thank you enough for your time. Thank you.
No worries. This was great. This is
Absolutely.
totally fun.
Excellent. Well, that said, then I have been Sam Elliott 64.
I've been Steve the American Killjoy.
I have been World of Woodrow.
And I'm the Bot Whisperer.
You are indeed the Bot Whisperer, and the three of us will see you for the round of 32, which is coming up in a few days' time. But until then, see you later.
Keep fighting robots. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Never stop.